There's nothing quite as comforting as gathering around with mom friends and sharing stories. Stories have a way of making us feel better, and they're great reminders that no family is perfect, and that's okay. So join us as we share some stories and laugh, learn, and grow together. It's the iMom Podcast. Hey, welcome to this episode of the iMom Podcast. I'm Abby, and I'm joined today once again by Megan and Susan and Chloe. Here's a statistic for you. About 73% of Americans are on social media. 78% of that group is female. So there are definitely a lot of moms who are scrolling, posting, commenting, sharing. Moms with kids under the age of 15 basically don't know a parenting world without social media. And there's a huge impact of that on our kids, our culture, and ourselves. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to be a good social media mom. The name of the episode is How's Your Online Etiquette? And so Chloe, our social media guru, has a story for us.
Yeah. So I was recently scrolling, and someone I'm friends with on Facebook, which means it could be someone I know or someone who knows my mom, because that's how Facebook friends work, I feel like. But anyways, a mom that I'm friends with on Facebook posted a picture of her daughter in the passenger seat of her car bawling her eyes out. And the caption read that her daughter didn't make the cheer squad and she was really upset about it. And it just shocked me that this would be something that a mom would feel like she should share. And just thinking as the daughter, I would have been so embarrassed, and I think I would have felt like my mom had crossed a line and shared a private moment. And I read the comments on the post because I was fully invested at that point. And all the comments were really sweet and supportive, and people were, offering their support, saying, oh, like she's going to get it next year, things like that. So I don't think that the mom thought anything wrong with the post. Sure. I think she was just sharing. But it got me thinking, like, what is appropriate for a mom on social media to share about, not only her life, but the life of her children. So I just kind of wanted to talk to the three of you about how do you walk that line between sharing your life and oversharing your child's?
Well, because it's the mom's life in that she has a daughter who is experiencing something hard that she has to help her through. So It's mom's life, but this is really your child's life and how you're observing and reacting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also laughing at the irony of this, given that this is a public podcast where we're talking about our kids.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. So like Susan, you've written about your kids for decades. I came from radio where I talked about my kids on the air and wrote about my kids. So let's talk about that for a second. Like how did you balance privacy and transparency?
I didn't.
Sorry, Megan.
Megan, how did that
Megan, how did that work for you?
Let me tell you, one of my friends in my sorority when I was in college printed out one of my mom's articles about her sex life, I guess. I don't know. I didn't read it.
It was an article about
and
read
it
marriage,
to our entire sorority, and my friends were rolling on the floor laughing. And I was like, I literally had to leave. I had to leave the house.
Now that was me in my life, though. I wasn't writing about your sex life.
True.
That's coming next.
What do you mean?
Well, I think that parents have always shared about their kids. Like my mom was a teacher, and I remember like I went to her classroom one day, and one of the kids in her class said something like, I heard you're starting to wear a bra.
What?
It's like my mom shared that with her students. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And that got back to me. And so like, I think that parents have always shared about their kids to whomever. But when it comes to social media or like for me doing radio, once I said it, it was done. Like you don't record the morning show. It was done. For you, Susan, if you're putting it in print, kids can print it out and read it and, in front of the whole sorority. Right. So were you careful about some things, or were you just kind of like,
some
it is
things
what it is?
because Mark and I had a marriage podcast too. I mean, a family first podcast. So usually we would say one of our children. Yeah. Now, if you knew us well, you could probably figure out which child. But there were certain things we just never shared, Now, to Chloe's point today with social media, it's a lot more, for us, it was telling stories about parenting or marriage that happened in the past versus social media can be a little bit more raw because if it's about the child and it's in the moment, like the girl crying, it could really be super hurtful. So I think it's different a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't post a lot about my family on social media.
Right.
I really don't post a lot anymore.
I think the tricky thing too is that you don't know as your kids grow up, you don't know what they care about necessarily. Right. So like for me, the stuff that I've written about my kids or said about my kids, I feel like they would hear it and go, oh, that's no big deal.
Yeah.
But you don't know what's a big deal until they're like, Mom, why did you say that? Why would you share that? I feel like there's definite like no-nos.
Yeah.
And what's your motivation? Are you sharing out of an effort to be sensational, or are you sharing as a point in a lesson or something like that? It's different too, the intent to the child.
Yeah.
On why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Are you doing it because you're a drama queen?
Right. Yeah. And that goes into the whole online etiquette thing. Like, what is your relationship with social media? I think every mom has to ask herself that. Like, are you in a healthy relationship with social media? And there are a few, things that you can ask yourself to answer that question. Like, am I posting this to prove or validate something? Like, am I posting this picture of myself and my kids to tell everybody, look, we're a happy family and we can, my house looks this way, or we go and do these things. I think there's so much comparison and one-upping on social media that it's just, Another question you can ask is, will taking this picture and posting this disrupt the good flow of the moment? And I think that a lot of moms, and I know I've been guilty of that, like we're having a good time and, but let me post this. And all of a sudden the kids are like, okay, well, I guess we're not in this moment anymore. They probably don't say it, but I think that happens. And then are you posting stuff that's too personal? And I think that if you're asking those three questions and the answers, if you're being honest with yourself, if the answers show no, you know what, I think that my relationship with social media is causing a problem with my family and the relationships in my family, then maybe it's time to step back.
Why do we post so much, people? Okay, so I was just thinking about that. Is it better to post something for your friends to see, or is it better to pick up the phone and tell them? So that's what it's kind of replacing, right? When we post it, it's instead of us picking up the phone and sharing some good news with somebody. And if we wouldn't share that good news with them, why are we posting it?
I think there's so much psychology behind it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm really thinking about this.
Just the people's addiction to social media, the truth behind the joke of, if I don't post it, it didn't happen. Like, that's a joke, but it is very true for a lot of people's just kind of mental process. Like, if I didn't tell people I did this, then is it as special? Is it as important? I think that there's so much...
and is it only certain personalities? Because I know two of my kids don't post anything ever. They just don't want to deal with it. And that's how kind of I've gotten. Like I'll be on a vacation. I'll think, this will be so fun to post. It takes so much time to create the story and the whole thing that I never get around to it.
Yeah. I do think it's a personality thing. And Chloe, I'm curious to know, as an Enneagram 3.
And our social media manager.
Right? Versus maybe your husband, who is a little bit maybe more private or more whatever. Like, my husband is a 3 and likes to show people what he's done.
Right.
It's a very proud moment for him for a lot of things. And meanwhile, I'm a little bit less public about stuff like that.
Yeah, no, my husband posts on Instagram twice a year, once for my birthday and once to show a fish that he caught. He's not on...
This is what he really cares about.
Literally.
Fish or you.
Literally. His Instagram is me and fish, and that is it. But yeah, I think... It's interesting because I grew up with social media, very much. So I actually was thinking about this recently because... I'm a runner. I've talked about this on this show before, and I've done several marathons, and I was training for a marathon, and I had taken a video on several of my long runs to kind of do like a reel, an Instagram reel or TikTok of all my training. and basically just ran into some health stuff, which has I had to back out of the race. So I'm not going to get to race. And then I started to be like, well, I'm going to make a reel where I talk about what happened and I share all this. And then I thought about that and I'm like, no, I don't want to share this. This is private. So I think I'm really learning the balance of like praying and asking the Lord, like, what do I need to share and what do I not need to share? Like, what's private and what's not? Because some of the stuff with running, like, I have people reach out to me and they're like, oh, like, you know, you've motivated me to start doing this. Like, so I love that. And I like interacting with people. I also have friends who run, so it's fun to kind of look back and forth on that stuff. But I definitely have struggled with that in the past. Like, even looking back at my Instagram things that I shared, I'm like, why did I think that was appropriate to share? Yeah. You know, it's just not, whether it was braggy or whether it's just private. I think when I started working in social media, that has changed my perspective on social a ton. I used to really care about like when I post, how many likes I get. Will people like this? I don't care about that now. I post things for me now. I think just because it's my job and that energy is put into my work, not into my personal life. It's like, it's the way I see it is very different now.
Yeah. Megan, how are you with posting? Like, how often do you post and what do you look for when you post? Like, what is your motivation?
I think for me, it's mainly just social stuff. For example, my friend's husband works on Capitol Hill and there was an event at the White House. And so the four of us went to that, which, I mean, I don't go to the White House every day. So, you know, that's a big deal. Pretty significant event. And so, you know, I posted the four of us going to do that together, which is really just like a fun memory for the four of us. And so I think mine is mainly just social stuff. I do post some stuff about my kids, but to your point, Chloe, I try to like really think through what I'm going to post of them, because the nice thing about posting your kids on social media is like my grandmother, who is actually on Instagram, sees them that way, and like friends and family who we don't live nearby anymore, but like want updates on the kids or whatever, want to see the kids. I'm just not going to like text everyone a picture of my kid. One, because they probably don't care that much. And two, that's a lot of work. So for like my friends and family that live in Florida that don't get to see them that often, it's a good way for them to be able to see them and still feel connected to them. But I always want to make sure that like, it is something that they would be okay with everyone seeing down the line.
So should we think of let's say our Instagram feed as our scrapbook?
Yes. Yeah.
And, you know, if you would put it in the scrapbook, then years from now and your child looks at it, or if the relatives look at it or your friends look at it, is it worth being in the scrapbook? You know, because you don't print every picture. You don't take the time to put every picture in it. Well, no, I never did scrapbooks, too many kids. But is it, should we think about it a little bit more like that?
That's what I like to do, is like look at it like a scrapbook, like post on Instagram to like look back on my favorite parts of the year. I post on Facebook for my mom's friends to hype me up, because when I post, they're like, wow, this is great.
Well, see, but if you look at it as a scrapbook, one of my kind of hangups with social media is this like balance between it being the highlight reel, and so everyone just shows the best part of their life and whatever. But then also the people that get very real and very like almost like, I'm going to show you real life. And it's like, well, the other stuff is real life too. You know, it's like that weird tension between.
I will say this. I've seen people use it as a way of finding community. Like I saw this one mom that I followed the other day, and her child is just struggling with this really awful illness and is constantly in the hospital. And she's been able to connect with other moms with kids that have the same deal. And it's also been a way for like people to pray for her and things like that, or pray for the child. So I have seen it in that real aspect, where it's not necessarily a highlight reel, but it's not being like dramatic. It's literally a community for her. Now, personally, I don't think I would do that because that's just not me, but I'm sure it's helped her in certain ways, like kind of cope with the situation.
Right. But it's kind of just like there's nothing wrong with sharing real life. Of course,
Right.
that's great. But when it's kind of your brand that like, oh, I'm real, you're implying that the other people are not real just because they are posting beautiful pictures.
Yeah, and I think it is a personality type, like you were saying, Megan. I think some people like, and I've shared some stuff, like some pretty personal stuff, like that about things I've struggled with that I know has like opened up conversation between me and other people. And I don't do it all the time. I really have to be in like a certain headspace to do it. But I think some people are more naturally vulnerable and they're good at that. There is this big trend on TikTok right now of people posting mental breakdowns. Like, I don't know if they just
I saw some of
put
this.
their phone on record and they'll like have a panic attack or something like that. And I'm not saying it's not real.
How are you aware enough to like hit record if you're having a panic attack?
I don't know, but I just like, I know what that's like to have a panic attack, and I would never want to watch it back personally or have other people watch it. And it is really interesting to me. And I don't know if like, I mean, even like just seeing kind of some of the mommy influencers whose kids are growing up on social media, doing TikTok dances or baking cookies or things like that. I don't know. It reminds me of like what you were saying, Abby, about like, are we ruining the flow of the moment? Like, are we really there, or are we creating something so it looks like something to other people?
Right.
Well, this is the problem with reality TV. We're trying to create our own little mini reality TV,
I think
which
so.
isn't reality.
Yeah. Megan, what were you going to say?
One thing I was going to say too, Chloe, you and I have talked about this a lot, is like, I think it's great to be real and give people realistic expectations about being a mom. But I think it's gone over the top with almost scaring people out of becoming a parent because they share too much of the realness. And like, just because that's your experience, that doesn't mean that it's going to be someone else's experience. But I think if you're not a parent yet and you're not a mom and you see that, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen to me, or I don't want to go through that, or I don't want to do that. And so I feel like it's almost gotten too real versus like showing the great side of being a parent and having a baby and everything like that.
Yeah, that's so true.
You know, if we're talking about social media etiquette, I think one of the big the bad manners that a lot of women are guilty of is forgetting that there is a human on the other side of the post. So, you know, we see that a lot in the comments section on our I'm on Facebook page. It's like the way that we attack one another, you know, you just have forgotten that this is another mom who did sleep training, where you think cried out is horrible, and you've forgotten that this woman is a woman, a human. And I just... Maybe I think part of it is that we forget the social side of social media, that that other people see this, and it's not a conversation just between two people. You are calling out somebody in front of other friends or attacking. You know, it's just. I think men are probably more guilty of it than women, because I think we do have a little bit more sensitivity, but just it's not making us look good.
Yeah, I can say that just as social media manager for Family First. You know, we have I'm Mom, our motherhood brand, and then we have All Pro Dad, our fatherhood brand. And the comments between comparing the women and the men on All Pro Dad, it's insane. The things that men post on our Facebook pages, the things they say to each other, it's shocking. And I've cried going through comments, just the way that we receive things and the way they feel like they can just say things. So it's something that it can't be overstated. It needs to be talked about constantly. Just that, like you said, you know, when people are sharing and they're feeling like they can share things like, you know, what I mentioned in the story, this moment between a mom and her daughter, when people are sharing things that are deep, whether it's this is what I did in parenting, this is what's going on in my life, and you look at that and you think this is an opportunity for me to give my insight, to tear this person down, to not be considerate with my words, you don't realize that you're hurting this person on so many levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about how I think every woman, every person has influence in some way or another. And for all of us, it is influence over our families. But when you get on social media, all of a sudden you have influence over anybody that follows your account, even if that other person is more popular than you or whatever. What you say still has an impact on other people. And I think that we can use that reach for good or for bad. I know that like I've seen other parents from my kids' school post and comment on things, and I'm like, wow. I would not think that kind of language or that type of topic would come out of your mouth. And I'm like, well, here we are again, forgetting that everybody sees what you're posting on social media.
I think the problem is we've kind of lost sight on, the gift of language is the gift from God. And he certainly has a lot of proverbs about how to use that. And if it's not edifying, if it doesn't have a purpose, then, we're just stirring up dissension, and really to think about, why am I saying this to this person?
Oh, that's good.
And we don't have to say everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the why you post and then why you comment. I think that what I try to do, especially before I post, is I'll ask, why do I have this need? Why do I feel this what's the word? Like, it's not something I have control of. Like, all of a sudden I have a compulsion to post. Why? And I go, well, maybe it's because I think that people care about this. And I'm like, I don't think they really care.
Yeah.
It's a feeling of self-importance that you're like, I have to post this and I have to say this because I am important.
And it's not to minimize, though, also, some people are called to use their influence, and social media is a channel. I mean, okay, Jesus got into a boat and rowed out to the middle of the lake so he could project further. We need tools to project the good, and social media can be used to that. But if you haven't been called to do that, then you don't.
That's a really good point.
You don't need to be an influencer.
Needed a podcast. He should have had a podcast. It would be good. I think.
Really should.
So how can we be, as far as influence, how can we be a good online example for our kids? Because if they are getting to the age where they're starting to use social media or just the internet even, I think that we have these expectations and these rules that we set for them, like time constraints, but are we following the same rules that we give our kids? The whole like, don't do as I do as I tell you. I don't think it's going to work. So I think every mom can ask herself like what boundaries she's set for herself and her phone or her computer. Like, do you have it at the dinner table? Will you use it in the middle of a conversation with your husband? Because your kids are watching, do you use it in the car? Who do you follow?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, who do you follow? Because like I don't know if I've talked about this on this podcast, but like I've been like scrolling on my phone with my husband beside me, and like, someone posts something where they're in a very inappropriate outfit, and I'm like, oh gosh, like I don't want him looking at this. So like I just got to delete. Like I just can't follow this person.
We need a post for good campaign. What post are you reading for? Is it for good? What are you saying? Is it for good? What's
my
your
husband
motive?
was following a lot of like fitness accounts. And when I would grab his phone and look through, what is it on Instagram? It's not the For You page, but it's like your
Discover page.
Yeah. There would be like female fitness people or whatever. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is borderline inappropriate. And I would ask him and he's like, it's from this such and such thing. And I'd trust him. I believe him. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't still affect me to see a picture of a woman in like a sports bra and these tiny little shorts on his feed.
Yeah, so true.
You don't feel like you measured up.
Exactly. I mean, I do. It's fine. That's how I look like, of course. But so yeah, I think that who you follow, what you share and what you post. I mean, your kids might not, if you're on Facebook, your kids are probably not looking at what you're sharing on Facebook because they don't think it's cool. Like they're not looking at that, but they might look over your shoulder and the memes, you have influence over them. They're watching.
Yeah. I will say one boundary I have for myself that has, I think, kept me out of a lot of trouble is I'm not allowed to post or comment about anything political on Facebook and that, or Instagram, Twitter, whatever. And that has helped me from posting things and then commenting and engaging on things, because it's like, just because I have an opinion, I do not believe social media is the place to share that. So that I feel like has helped me stay out of trouble.
So let's wrap up by talking about other boundaries, other ways that that we can set some restrictions for ourselves, especially if you realize after you've been on social media that you feel worse than when you started. I think it's time to set up some boundaries. So Megan, do you have any ways that you, cut yourself off or try to put a little wall up between yourself and Instagram?
Yeah, well, the crazy thing is that, like, sometimes I'll just be on my phone and not even realize that I've been on it for that long. Like, time will just go by. And so I have really tried to stop looking at my phone before bed.
Oh, that's
because
good.
I realized I was, like, using it to go to bed.
Yeah.
And so and then my mind gets racing about things, or I'm just thinking about dumb stuff that I don't need to be thinking about. And so I've just really tried to not. And another thing I've realized too is doing it when my kids are here and I should be engaging with them. You can probably hear him in the background. He just got home from school. But doing it when I should be engaging with them and talking with them and spending the time I do have with them versus looking at my phone at someone I barely even know.
Yeah.
That's good.
I had a wake up call one time. I was at the beach and I was taking a picture of one of my sons. He was like right in front of me and I was taking a picture of him with the intention to post. And the photo turns out like where he's leaning over because he wants to see me beyond my phone.
cute.
And I didn't post it. I was like, oh, he wanted to talk to me and I wanted to take his picture to post it. And Abby, put your phone down,
Right,
learn from this. So Megan, talking about, I start my day with the phone, unfortunately. Like I'll set my alarm for 5:30. And when my alarm goes off, I'll be like, get up, get up, get up. You can work out and you'll have this much time. And I plan my minutes in my head. And then I'll grab my phone and 20 minutes goes by and I'm like, you did not wake up at 5:30 to scroll your phone for 20 minutes.
Wow,
that is not
yeah.
why you disciplined yourself to get up at this hour.
And it's so easy to do that, like muscle memory. You
Yes.
just open Instagram.
Yes.
Like I that hits close to
Like
home.
reading the paper for other people.
Yeah.
Yes.
My only thing is I don't share or I don't say anything negative to other people. Like I only want to encourage people on social media. And I feel like if I have a disagreement with them or something like that, I should take it to them personally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if
That's
I
good.
don't know them, like I really don't, I'm reading something I don't know, then God hasn't called me to,
Sure.
I'm not in their inner circle. I don't know the whole situation, so I shouldn't be speaking into
That's
it.
really good.
That's a good
And
restriction
they've
for
done
yourself.
studies on this is really with political discourse, but I'm sure it relates to anything else. Like within the medium of social media, if you have an opposing opinion and you share that over social media, that person is more likely to move further away from your point of view and more into their point of view.
It's like if it is social media, if you went to a party, would you do that at a party? Would you get into a fight with someone about something in the middle of the room at a party? And if that's what social media is, then why are we doing that?
Yeah.
Why are we arguing with people or putting them down? It's just not very social. It's not,
Yep. Yep.
Leave the party.
Leave the party.
Other practical tips, you can just take the app off your phone. If you're realizing it's really that bad, take the app off your phone, disable notifications so it's not like popping up and tapping you on the shoulder. And then I love this idea to move that icon to a different spot because like you said, Chloe, a lot of it's muscle memory and your thumb just goes straight to that thing. So move it around every once in a while. Every month, move your Instagram icon or whatever to another spot, bury it deeper in a folder or bin or whatever on your home screen or move it off your home screen. Just get out of that habit.
Or if you, like on Twitter, you can create different folders. Choose to read something that's educational or like if you have to follow certain people for your industry or something like that, choose to just read those.
That's
like I'm
good.
going to only, I need to keep up on what's happening in the stock market or something.
Yeah,
That's what my son
good.
does.
Yeah.
All good ideas. We're going to post in the show notes a printable, and it's about cell phone rules for moms, but then also some good resources on checking your online etiquette, being a good online example, and how to stop scrolling. So find those in the show notes. If you enjoy these conversations, we also have them basically in like article form every day. It goes out in the iMom Minute, and we send out printables and really good stuff. Great resources for moms to grow in wisdom and to be encouraged. So you can subscribe right there in the show notes. And thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the iMom podcast. iMom is the motherhood program of the nonprofit organization Family First. Along with our fatherhood program, All Pro Dad, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the iMom Minute, by going to imom.com/subscribe and get tons of great ideas, insight, and inspiration. The iMom podcast is hosted by me, Abby Watts, along with Susan Merrill, Megan Tigner, and Chloe Blumenthal.